Good morning, everybody. I would like to welcome you all here at our conference. We have a very busy agenda ahead of us, so pardon the small delay. My name is Jan Lukačevič, and I'm a business developer here in Prague for the Prague Innovation Institute. I got to this area almost 8 years ago, when during my university studies I started doing some space research in some student projects, and over the years I evolved. First I spent a couple of years in space research, followed by my work for Czech Academy of Sciences in engineering positions, and later on I discovered that it's not just space research, because space is much more. I'm also a member of the advisory group of NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, where we commonly discovered that space also has plenty of overlaps with defense area. And most recently, here at Prague Innovation Institute, I discovered that there's plenty of opportunities also for Prague citizens, and that space is not just research or just defense. Space is very common. It surrounds us, quite literally. We are part of it, but at the same time, it provides us with many benefits. So today's agenda aims at introducing this area of various space activities. For that reason, we invited some excellent speakers from these areas, from defense, from space research, but at the same time from the business area. So you will hear also about private companies, startups, and many other interesting projects that are taking place. What is common for them is that all of these projects and initiatives are with Czech involvement. So that's something very encouraging for us. And I'm very glad that Czech Republic and the city of Prague is trying to be in a loop, be involved, and I hope that this conference will allow us to even more exploit the benefits of space, not only for the city, but also for the country and all its inhabitants. So, enjoy our keynotes, enjoy the panel discussions, and I would like to invite on stage Mr. Jaromír Beránek, who is a member of the Prague City Assembly, for his opening remarks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all at the historical premises of Mayor's residence of the city of Prague. I was hoping to see a little bit more of you here, but it's still very good that you all managed to come, because the in-person events, unlike over the past 2 or 2.5 years, are still very important to us. They really mean a lot, and I'm happy to be able to welcome you all here. Today I'm here to step in for Mr. Mayor. As you might know, we will have the constituting city assembly meeting in 2 days, so there are many things going on, many wild negotiations undergoing, so please hold your fingers crossed for us so that we can continue with the work that we started a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago also there were identified 4 key priorities when it comes to high technologies development and novelty and innovation in the city of Prague. Space and space research and space industry being one of those areas. We have here a whole gallery of colleagues who are dedicated to regional innovation strategy of the city of Prague and to the development of precisely those technologies that I've mentioned. I would like to thank to them also for the organization of this wonderful event, and I hope that today we will learn, all of us, something new that will be motivating, that will be eye-opening, that will be inspiring for us. I came here to this conference with the expectation to meet some new interesting people, to maybe start some new international contacts, and as I already suggested, to get inspired. And this is probably also a little welcome for you all to find your particular niche, because everyone is in fact affected by the space activities. And Czech Republic, and especially Prague, and also probably our colleagues from the city of Brno, not to forget about them, are keen and dedicated to work more intensely on this area. Also, I would like to thank the colleagues from the Czech Invest Agency, which is a state or governmental agency dedicated to attracting foreign investments into the Czech Republic, and also our hosts from the Prague residents who are happy to provide this event venue anytime that we ask them. And I know this is a lot of hard work. And if you are interested to learn more details about these beautiful premises, I will be happy to share them with you during the coffee breaks. Anyway, for the conclusion, let me once again thank you for coming here, enjoy the conference, and I hope that we will have some fruitful outcomes after today, be it getting closer to the space, maybe starting some new business contacts, or learning something new for our personal benefit. Please enjoy the conference and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baranek, for kind words. Now, you mentioned the city, you mentioned our organization, so who better is to speak about Prague Innovation Institute than its director? I would like to invite on stage Tomáš Kopečný, the director of Prague Innovation Institute.
Thank you, Jan. I'm very happy to see so many people coming. Basically, what I believe is the first conference on space and the city here in Prague, even though Prague has such a long tradition of visionaries looking up to the stars, going back to Libuše, through Magister Kelly to Tycho de Brahe and others. For me, it's actually very happy to see that our innovation strategy has always held space as one of the key domains and intended to build up on this tradition of every little boy actually dreaming about space and stars. And I believe space has been part of the city of Prague basically in the same way as, let's say, Čakovice. It's just omnipresent, and we have recently started discovering that, and I'm very happy that we hopefully will develop on many future agendas here and kick off many interesting topics. Because obviously it's not only about what answers to the city and life we can find in the space. It's also about how we will urbanize space in the future, because as it is in our DNA to live in the cities, it is also in our DNA to dream about what's bigger than us and space in the first place. So it's space and the city is like a perfect couple, and I see these conferences opening up topics that actually, because both environments require us to ask about questions, how to actually survive in extreme conditions. And that's why we can actually draw a lot of use cases for use of technologies, applications, processes, materials in the life of the city, as well as outlining the future of our space, outer space presents. I'm also very happy that we have representatives of the Czech state here, because I believe the cooperation between the city level and the state level is absolutely crucial. I believe that cities will be able to define their needs and, let's say, future use cases for further utilization of space research, technology and stuff. And state obviously holds the keys to the best way how to coordinate all the efforts and how to concentrate the resources and budgets to facilitate that. So I'm happy we have as one of the keynote and the most important keynote speaker here, Mr. Kobera, who's technically the head of what one of my colleagues said, is basically some sort of a national cosmic and space agency. I'm also happy that next year we'll be renewing, we'll be making amendments to our innovation strategy, and which strategy is basically the menu, how you spend the money in the most effective way. So space will definitely be there mentioned as one of the primary area of measures, and we will focus on that a lot. So we take this conference also as one of the first steps to be able to define our priorities better. So as my colleague said, I hope that we will enjoy this conference a lot. I hope to have a lot of interesting networking in the intermissions, in the breaks, and wish you a fruitful conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Tomáš. And to close the circle, we need to invite on stage already mentioned Mr. Kobera. Mr. Kobera is a head of, is a director of ITS and space activities, research, development and innovation departments at the Ministry of Transport. And I'm very delighted that we have him here because thanks to him and thanks to efforts of his department, we are where we are, literally, considering how much the space era developed and evolved over the years. When I started, it was a lot smaller, and I'm really glad that we can cooperate and we are bringing space together closer to people, because space is not something very distant and exotic. Space is something closer than ever to our ordinary lives. It's already surrounding many of our daily activities, and Mr. Kobera will most likely mention this in his opening remarks. Please welcome him on stage.
Good morning to everybody. Just in the morning, I was in Rostock and I opened a conference on automotive, and well, I just would like to react what Mr. Lukačevič said. It's not the ministry which is the main focal point. The thing is that it's all about cooperation. It's about our joint efforts. We really need to have joint efforts to move things forward. And this is, I think, the most important thing. In the Czech Republic, we have strong coordination of space activities over many years, and maybe this is the main, base for all our successes. I believe there are some. We can look back, and there are some. And well, that's we are here, and it's one of the reasons that we really understand that things are moving on. Over many years, space was considered as space science only. And well, so far I have many reactions from people around, from politicians, from general public, that space is really about some trips to Mars, and maybe better with piloted crew. Still, these shortcuts are very important, maybe to think about a bit, because well, we really need to consider space not only about space science, which is very important, which enabled many things which we have now. But we started to think about space as about business. And again, over many years in the US we started, but well, in the Western Europe, well, it was quite obvious, but not in the eastern part, as we were part of the Soviet Union, so it was not that same. But well, now space and business is quite close to each other, and I believe that we can see it, and how space can serve in technologies. It's quite obvious that this transfer of technologies to our daily lives, it's quite visible, and not only technologies, but also the procedures and documentation and many other things which helped us to do things maybe different way. Some years ago, a new approach started. The space is now more user-centric. You know, the massive investments to technologies enabled the creation of space infrastructures like Galileo, EGNOS, Copernicus, and this was, you know, quite technology push from the very beginning. But now it changed. Now we see users from various sectors as the key. You know, they define their user requirements to be able to give us the feedback what is needed for future. And USPA agency here in Prague, the agency or EU agency for the space program, they have their market reports. There are 17 market segments. So well, this is a huge amount of market segments, which is not that visible that it's about space. So we can talk about drones, we can talk about rails, we can talk about healthcare, we can talk about agriculture, and all are related to space. Even in the city of Prague here, space is quite visible in trams, in buses, you know, because well, the transport operator and the municipality they were very proactive in absorbing what is here, well, ready to be used, and well, the buses and trams are equipped by Galileo receivers. And space is an enabler, so it's not the goal as such. So it's an enabler of some, you know, needs we have. And nowadays we see another dimension of space. It's security. Over many years it was not that obvious, but well, with the war in Ukraine, it was even more obvious that space and security is very close to each other. Again, space is an enabler and helps us to go to security applications. The Czech Republic and Prague is very well positioned, honestly. Over many years, I said we had very good coordination, very active academia, very active industry, good cooperation among all these. We are active on public awareness or awareness raising. We're still not there. We really need to accelerate to show the benefits of space in various approaches, as I mentioned, from science, technology, business, users, applications, and security. Defense, maybe it's in brackets too. So Prague started quite well because it was very proactive in supporting ISABIC, Business Incubation Center, which was established a few years ago, and over 40 companies already incubated, and I see that Czech University is here represented to give you more information. But well, these are the examples of companies which are providing solutions, which are helping our economy, which are helping our daily lives, and they show us how space is used well. So this is not the only case, but well, Space Academy, the planetarium, and observatory, and the satellite you have, the first planetarium in the world operating its own satellite. So it's great. It's really great. And as I said, if we continue like this, we have a very good future. So thank you for this activity. It's not about Mars only. It's also about something which is closer to our needs, and this all is about space. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kobera. And I'm really glad that you already mentioned some of the other actors in the field. And it is not prearranged that Mr. Kobera mentioned ISABIC, but our first keynote speaker for today will be Maria Němečková, who is from ISABIC, meaning business incubator of ESA. She's the business incubation manager for space startups, and she works in Prague and will tell us about public investment in space startups. Please invite her on stage.
Okay, this is a bit I'm too small for this one. Yeah, thank you for the kind introduction. Yeah. Oops. Thank you. Okay, sorry for being small. Yeah, thank you everyone for the kind introduction and for the keynotes before me. They were inspiring, and thank you for mentioning ISABIC already. It was mentioned a few times by Jan and by Václav that cooperation is important, and ISABIC is actually a part of that. I think we're a prime example of what cooperation can achieve. But first of all, let me get back to the topic of this conference, which is, let's say, space and cities. Yeah, you can't really see that slide over there, but let me check. This way? Ah, great. So there are many applications that space satellites can provide for, let's say, sustainable and smart cities, and that's what we are aiming for right now, especially in Prague and other bigger cities. Oh, okay. Did the sound change? Okay, yeah, sorry. Anyway, so the segments were already mentioned. There's satellite navigation, satellite communication, and Earth observation, and all those three segments that are very important for smart cities and for the development of applications in smart cities. We can use navigation not only in your GPS in your phone or your GNSS navigation in your phones, but it also serves for public transportation and, let's say, public transportation management and the management of traffic in the city overall. The satellite communication, I mean, you probably don't know that, but you've already used space several times today. And when you took the tram here, when you drove your car here, you used space. And you might not even be aware of that. And of course, then Earth observation comes to place using heat maps and other smart applications for the cities to make them more livable and viable for the citizens, and helping the infrastructure to adapt to climate change and other topics. Oops. Yeah, these are another examples of that. I mean, we can manage carbon emissions, we can manage traffic jams, we can manage anything with space. What I want to talk about today is the role of startups in this environment and why it is important for the cities and for the authorities to invest in startups and be interested in startups, because they are a driver of, let's say, safe and resilient cities and healthy and inclusive cities and clean cities and efficient cities, etc., because they provide the whole thing. Yeah. So why startups? Startups are basically catalyzing growth and innovation in the cities, but also in the regions. And it is important to keep the human potential and the excellent academic experience that we have in the Czech Republic and in Prague, and lock it in the country via supporting startups, via supporting technology transfers and other initiatives like that. It also creates jobs, attracts foreign investment and other development to the country. So basically, if you support space-related startups, you get, let's say, strengthened competitive position in the global market. So. Coming back to the topic why I'm here, I represent the ISABIC, the ISA Business Incubation Center, Czech Republic. It's a whole network of business incubators all over Europe. Basically, any member state has their own incubation center. It gives us, oh, you can't really see the map. I'm sorry about that. There was supposed to be a map. Anyways, it's a network of incubators that support, already supported more than 1,200 companies and more than 200 startups, and are currently incubation. So we are quite big in the field. Okay, here the map can be seen. As my colleague mentioned, we have 2 branches, one in Prague, one in Brno, and we've already incubated or have in incubation currently 42 startups, which is not a small number. Again, as the speakers before me mentioned, Czech Invest is a big part of that because it's a local operator. And we are trying to balance the ratio between hardware and software startups. I will show you later how both hardware and software can help the city of Prague or other cities make them more viable and smart. Yeah, I would say the Prague branch is a bit bigger. So thank you to the city of Prague. Right, here are some numbers to get your attention. We have calculated that for every €1 spent on the startup from the funding, there has been €17 generated, which does not seem like much, but if you consider we give the startups 50,000 euros, it's much bigger. We, of course, have 42 startups, but 20 of those were only founded because of the program. They would not be existing right now, or their path to the market would be much harder. We have foreign founders coming to the Czech Republic, starting companies in the Czech Republic and enhancing the environment with their foreign knowledge, let's say. So it's also not only keeping the smart people in, but also bringing them from abroad. We have calculated the 215 new jobs created. It does not seem that much, but considering 42 startups, it's quite a nice number. And our startups are based in Prague or somewhere else in Czech Republic, but they are expanding. Doing business in other countries. We have 110 countries where they do businesses in. And also they have generated some other investment, either in form of VC funding or angel investors, or in terms of space projects, for example, from ESA, or already mentioned USPA in that. I see you're taking a picture, wait. For those who don't know, ESA Big, what we do, we offer startups with non-equity funding of 50,000 euros. We give them mentoring, we give them networking opportunities, offices, etc. Basically what your company might need when you are starting a business and you don't really know how to do that, or you're looking for support, financial support. So we give you the kickstart for that. The incubation could be up to 2 years, and I think one of the most important things is that you get to use the ESA brand as a door opener for the other development of your company. And as I mentioned, we are supporting innovative technology transfer companies, students, entrepreneurs, and anything else that could enhance the city. So coming back, these are our startups, right? These are some of our startups shown here. We do have quite a broad portfolio of them. And coming back to the urban development, I've selected 3 startups from our already incubated or in incubation startups that do something for, let's say, cities and the smart city development. The first one is Urban Comfort, Jako ten Urban Comfort. They already work with the city of Prague and with the public transportation system and devised, let's say, climate maps and heat maps of the city, showcasing where there should be improvements, where there are hotspots in the city where there is improvement needed. And actually, I think if you've seen in Prague those sprinklers and some of those green public transport stations, this is a bit of their job, let's say, or their suggestion, and Prague followed. So I'm happy that also our startups can cooperate with the city of Prague. The second one is a newcomer to us. It's Statutest, and they are on the hardware part of the portfolio, let's say, and they help protecting buildings. I don't know how many of you are living in Prague currently, but do you remember how the bridge fell down in Troja, right? So if they would use our startup, it could be prevented. They have a tiny hardware box that they put on bridges and buildings, and it monitors the shaking of the building, the usage of the building, and basically tells you, okay, now you need to repair it or it's going to fall out, etc. They're using navigation data to have sub-millimeter movement detection, which is quite impressive in my opinion. And the third one I've selected is Intel Maps. They're fresh alumni of ours, And they do, let's say, building management and digital twins for buildings. They are working with Poliklinika Prosek, for example, also with a few schools in Prague, and they help them not only navigate but also monitor which parts of the building are, let's say, in need of repairs or in need of maintenance. So, yeah, if you're familiar with the concept of digital twin, I do not need to remind you more. No, this way? Oh, okay. There was one more slide, but I don't know what happened. But so thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'll be here answering them soon. And thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you very much. I'm glad that you presented us with some very specific and concrete examples how space can benefit the city. And who else should we invite on stage other than a person who's actually doing the space startup itself? The next speaker, or a fellow panelist, as I should better say, is Jelly Javornický, who's a CEO and co-founder, one of the most successful Czech space startups, Space Now. So please invite him on stage. And I will, maybe if Maria sits there, I will sit right next to them in a minute, but I just wanted to say a bit of a formal announcement, because our conference is streamed online, so you can share it with your colleagues. Also, we, despite being in a residence of a mayor and wearing suits, aim to have it more laid back, let's say, more lighthearted. So feel free to ask questions. There will be definitely an option. You can either ask directly by raising hand, or you can ask questions via Slido. If you are shy, you can also do it via online tools. I think our Slido will be on a slide in a couple of seconds, so don't worry that you will miss it out. Now, let's move on to the actual panel discussion. And I will just change microphone, sit here, hopefully you see us well. I'm really glad that we have representatives of the city here as well, and other space companies and city companies, because by providing specific examples, we can show that space is accessible. So my first question would be to our new speaker, Jelly. Can you tell us a bit what information can your company mine from the satellite imagery? What's actually, let's say, the job you do with Space Now?
Okay, so in Space Now we basically utilize over 80 algorithms using machine learning and deep learning. We're combining Earth observation satellites and other data to extract information. And the types of information we can get is anything from a simple change detection to feature extraction to, object identification, right? So, we can identify all the trees, buildings, roads, and, extract information about their size, dimension, and just combining them with other types of satellite like aperture radar. We're also able to measure displacement, subsidence, all these kind of things will provide you extremely helpful insights about what is happening, not only obviously in your city, but around it, right? So our biggest perspective is going back many years and creating a time series, right? So, understanding the past helps us, to better understand our situation and obviously understand the future. So just looking at the planet, looking at, a city, or looking at any type of infrastructure is very important from sort of a time perspective, right? So you're really able to go back 5, 6, maybe even 8 years and just create an insight, a timeline of information.
Thank you. That's very impressive. So hopefully the representatives of the city are paying attention. Now, Mari, on to you. You mentioned that you're, let's say, well established already. Are there any obstacles you're running into with your startups in the city of Prague? Is there anything that complicates your, let's say, work?
I really need to be careful here.
No. You definitely don't need to.
Oh, I would say, the city of Prague has been very helpful because for ESA big concept there needs to be local funding, and for us, for the Prague branch, is City of Prague. So thank you for that. Thank you for the support, and I hope it continues. Yay. Now, with the obstacles, I could think of one, and that is actually I do not see the potential used to its maximum, let's say. I would say it would be nicer for the city to get more involved with the startups on, let's say, application level. I think our startups have a lot to offer. But that goes both ways. I mean, it's not only on the side of Prague, it's also on our side that the cooperation could be more tangible in some terms.
Okay, thank you. I think that's an interesting remark. And I think it's really important to mention also the things that are not going that good, that well. Because in order to improve, you have to point out things that are not the best ones, not working properly. So thanks for mentioning this. Now, similar question to you, Jerry. In a way, what would be the best way for the city of Prague to support your efforts?
I think it's very important for city of Prague to kind of like understand the benefits of Earth observation, understand the benefits of space in general, and just enhance all these activities in a meaningful way, right? So it's not just about city development, planning, or making sure that we know where our parks are or should be, right? So it's about a vision for the future, a vision of where the city is going to go, where it should go, and how a general development is doing by using big data or obviously space insights. So just working with innovative companies, and there's plenty of companies in Prague, or obviously in Czech Republic in general. Just driving that innovation is not always easy for the city. I know the terms are changing every 4 years, so it's just difficult to embrace a strategy and then follow it for a meaningful amount of time, right? So I think that is the biggest problem.
Thank you for this. I think I can assure you that in the regional innovation strategy that we're developing at Prague Innovation Institute, space will play a key role. It's one of the main domains we'll focus on, so hopefully the things will change for better with our further involvement. Now, I already have a question from Slido, so let's move on to that. And I think that's a question that can be addressed by both of you. So, Maria, Jerry, what do you consider the biggest challenge in the segment of space technology currently?
I think space is hard in general, right? And everything you do around space is very expensive. Therefore, just jumping the wagon, just making sure that you succeed costs a lot of money, a lot of effort, right? So anything that you're trying to do in space will cost, probably 10 times more than anything that you would, try to do here. and the innovation, the amount of innovation past, let's say 5 years, maybe 8 years, we've seen has been caused by a significant decrease in the cost of a payload. So our ability to shoot things up has increased incredibly, which is just great, right? And I'm very excited about this. Space now wouldn't be here without that type of innovation, and that challenge has been the biggest challenge, for many years before.
I would say I agree with that, but also I see a big problem in the, let's say, popularity of downstream space. Meaning everybody likes space, they think it's cool, you know, Star Wars, Star Trek, shooting spaceships, and etc. But people do not realize that they use space every day, that space is part of their life and basically inherent part of their life nowadays. And they do not realize that much bigger part is the downstream. Downstream means using data, using technology. Someone once calculated, I've read it recently, that you use space technology or space data 30 to 40 times per day, which is incredible, and people do not realize that. So then the support for actually funding companies and startups and research in the area of using the data, using the technology, enhancing it, bringing it further, is not that as much as it should be. So I would say the biggest challenge is to explain to people that space is everywhere and space is in everything. And it can be really helpful to each and every individual in the city of Prague or in the Czech Republic or in the world, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this is an interesting remark, that we often forget about downstream. We always think about sending things up and rarely think about sending things down, meaning mostly data, not the satellites because they burn up, but the data itself is improving our lives significantly. And with that, I actually have another question. So the question from Slido is, what should city of Prague, in your perspective, or the Czech Republic, do in order to utilize the capabilities provided by space technology as much as possible? And I think that's the question mostly, let's say, regarding the ideal scenario, because you already are involved in this area for a couple of years, you know what are the hurdles and obstacles, but you also have certain vision of what would be the ideal scenario, how you would cooperate with the city. So, perhaps?
Okay, honestly, for me, ideal scenario would be that for the relevant startups that we incubate, City of Prague would be a test bed. Meaning you have a technology or software or a service that you need testing and you're incubated in the ISABIC. City of Prague is the place where you test it, for example, right? But that's the ideal scenario. I know how public institutions work, so this sounds from a sci-fi, like a sci-fi thing. I would just add to one thing that you said. It's not only data that you use from space, it's also materials, it's technologies, I don't know, patents and everything. There's so many things we don't realize that are space-based. Yeah. So, but for me, yeah, Prague being a testing city for our startups, that would be ideal for me. Overall, for the companies to be more open to embracing the solutions that are, let's say, non-conventional. But I think that the administrative for the past 4 years has been doing it quite well. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think City of Prague for the first time, and I only see that past couple of years. Maybe I didn't see it before, but is now able to embrace smaller companies and drive innovation through smaller companies. Right? Before it was all, this electricity provider bringing innovation, this, car manufacturer bringing innovation. It wasn't a real innovation, right? It was just a big company coming to our municipality and saying, okay, well, we want to do this, let's test it, can you give us money? We'll give you some in return, and then we'll see what's going to happen. So just embracing this strategy, obviously, is very important, and just, giving chance to smaller companies not so well established as the biggest players here.
Yeah, and we have yet another question, and I think it's almost a follow-up question for this, because there is a question regarding the future, meaning going into future, how do we ensure that space startups will stay here in Prague Czech Republic or perhaps Europe in general, and won't go just to the US where the commercial market is bigger. And I think it's better to start with you, Jerry, considering that you actually have US experience as well. So what would you do?
So our startups, started in the United States. We're still a US company that is based in New York, and but our biggest development office, our only development office and research sits here in Prague, in Karlín, and we're obviously proud. Starting a company in US back then was only meaningful because we had to provide, we couldn't get an access to the satellite imagery providers otherwise, right? So, obviously now that the times has changed and you can work with anyone. But before that, there were probably just 3 providers, and they all insisted that, they would only give us data if we were incorporated in the United States. So I think, what I see every day, we have some of the smartest people here, not only in Prague, obviously, but in Czech Republic, right? So the amount of people that are working and are interested in computer vision and what we do is just incredible, right? And I have direct comparison with companies that are much bigger than Space Now, much more well-funded. They're incorporated in France, they're incorporated in the United States, and it's just we see that when we compare apples to apples, we really have some geniuses here that are able to change the world a little bit, but also change the way we get insights from Earth observation. So that is, I wouldn't be afraid that people would leave. They would still be here. But the world is the playground for this, right? We can't just have a company that is focused on Czech Republic.
Okay, it's hard to react because you've said many my ideas, but honestly, I am also not afraid that they would be leaving, more of an expanding, and I think there's some sort of nationalism playing in our cards because in the US, I see the tendencies of employing US companies instead of like foreign companies, etc., etc. We can see this also in France, for example. But keeping them here, right now the environment and the ecosystem of the Czech Republic is very good for that. We have a lot of companies appearing, growing. To be honest, more in Brno, I would say, maybe, with the Brno space cluster and everything. I think Prague might maybe try more. But we do not realize that we really have a lot of companies and competent people doing this job and actually pushing Czech Republic forward. And also the political representation is now in very good position and supports that, as Mr. Cobra mentioned as well. And the question was what we can do for that? Or?
Yeah, like
Okay.
to ensure that they won't leave.
To ensure they won't leave. I would say continue in the support that the public, but also the private sector keeps giving to the companies. And I honestly believe that in terms of being more, let's say, innovative country, we need to be more self-aware. Because everybody keeps on saying, oh, we're just a small country, that does not matter. I mean, come on, look at Belgium. They're smaller than us. They have less people than us, and look what they do. Look at other countries, they're much smaller, have much less people, and look what they're doing. Estonia, for example. Czech Republic has a great potential, amazing people, very, very bright minds, one of the best universities in Europe. So what are we waiting for? Why are we still keep on saying, okay, we're just a small country, that does not matter? No, we're not. We're actually really good, and we do have the potential. And I would say in the past 5 years, this potential has been really tapped out, let's say, and we're trying to use that, but we really need to communicate to people this is what we want to do. But, yeah.
Thank you. Now there comes the most upvoted question from Slido so far, and I think it's really a good one considering why we're here today. There's a question from Christopher Svitok, who asks, if there's an actual market for space tech besides telecommunications, is there a demand in the private sector for, let's say, space services? And we may know the answer, but I think it's really important to say it out loud.
Yes.
And can you elaborate?
No. No, I mean, do you want to maybe, because you have the experience of being on the market?
So I think commercial is a vital part, you know, that we see demand growing. Like when we started the company, we thought obviously that it's all going to be commercial. We're just going to serve insights to, you know, financial institutions and sovereign wealth funds of the world. Yeah, you know, then we realized, okay, well, you know, we see defense and intelligence as the sort of still a biggest driver of you know, the whole market, you know, where the market is. But it has changed significantly, right? You know, it has changed past 4 years. I see, you know, commercial being sort of 50-50, you know, in our revenue, and sort of defense obviously will still play a very important part. Again, what, you know, after what happened this year, but you know, commercial traction, just serving these new type of customers is certainly more exciting, because you're kind of like bringing the real innovation, right? Because you know people from defense has been looking at tanks and planes forever, right, for 60 years, and then what we're trying to do here, for example, in cooperation with ESA, is basically bringing innovation, you know, using their satellite imagery, their satellites, to provide very clear insights to businesses that can utilize that information immediately, right, on sort of a daily basis, and create products that are derived from this data. Again, you know, so we're moving one chain up. So there's certainly a big commercial potential, a big commercial market that is already growing, you know.
If I might add, just from the experience with the startups that we incubated or will incubate, or the ones we talk to, I would say the vast majority of them are based in B2B, business to business, business model, let's say. They providing services or products directly to a customer, there's not that many of them. Most of them provide services or products to other companies, also B2G to governments, municipalities, etc. But the vast majority is business to business. So that speaks for itself, probably. The market is obviously there. And again, we need to clarify that there's a lot of downstream services that people don't realize are space as well, and that they need to reach out to space companies, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, Maria, there is a follow-up question for you directly, because you mentioned the potential. So how can we unveil this potential you were talking about? Is it only through investments, or are there other activities too?
I think we're already on the right path to do that, but I think it needs to come from both up and down. It needs to go both from within. We need people to start treat themselves, think about themselves and treat themselves differently. People in Czech Republic are great, but they're not courageous that much. I mean, I've encountered like a lot of different nationalities, and for example, the Italians, like if you throw them up, they come back through window, etc. They're just trying and pushing, even though they're not that good. And I would know like 5 different people in Czech Republic who are much better, but they don't go for it because they feel they, I don't know, can't make it. So I think it needs to come within and from the educational system. In some universities, in some high schools, for example, here in Prague, we have the Smíchovská průmyslovka. I don't know if they have a translation to English, honestly, but it's a industrial high school, and they're doing incredible things, and they're really pushing the young minds and opening them, cracking them open, and not forcing them, but trying to show them how to do their own business, how to innovate, how to think outside the box. There are some universities doing that as well. But then there is a lot of educational institutions that are still kind of stuck in the past, in the rails of the education in the box. So I would really call for like some sort of revolution in education a bit. So that's from the bottom maybe, also from the top. And yeah, government investment is also very important, but we also need the private investment for that. We do have a lot of VC funds and angel investors that are investing in technical startups, but they are very shy when it comes to space startups because they don't really know what to expect. So I think private investment could also pinch in more. Yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, I think that covers it quite well. Now on to Jerry again, because I see a question in Slido that hasn't been answered yet. Now, we have heard what you do in Space Now, but what is the problem that you solve?
So we obviously solve many problems, right? So, you know, our perspective on monitoring the Earth is to create a new ontology to better understand, you know, all our, you know, actions, both natural and man-made, right? So at the moment, we're monitoring over 150,000 locations worldwide, and you know, every couple of days, and we're providing insights from those locations because we have understanding about those locations, you know, being factories and other types of facilities, right? So just providing this insight to our customers. We give them a clear perspective on, you know, things like economical growth and in certain parts of the world. Obviously, our focus has been on monitoring those parts of the world where economical activity monitoring, reporting hasn't been a very sort of a transparent, right? So we're looking at China, you know, and monitoring their activities, and whenever they publish their economical estimate, we, you know, in comparison have a very hard data on, you know, their industrial locations and how they're doing, and just getting a clear insights and comparing apples to apples, again, showing our customers, you know, what is truth, right? So for us, it's all about transparency and being able to answer some of these questions that our customers are asking. You know, the second part of it is about, you know, a constant monitoring. You know, again, it can be anything from monitoring an infrastructure, or obviously in defense and intelligence, you're monitoring our, you know, our enemies, right? So the problems that we are solving is basically trying to predict, you know, if there's going to be another war, you know, where it's going to start, and how it's going to unfold. You know, as you all probably know, there's still war going on. So, you know, from space, it was clear many months before the war started that there's going to be a war, and you know, there were clear insights that this is happening. So, you know, we're only providing and feeding, you know, the algorithms with an imagery, and we don't let any human in the loop, so that we can't meddle with the data. Therefore, you know, we're trying to be totally not only transparent but unbiased in providing that type of information. So again, there's so many things, you know, so many insights you can get from understanding the satellite imagery data or Earth observation data in general, that I would talk for another hour or so.
Thank you for the specific examples. It's a bit of a sneak peek to our next keynote and panel discussion on defense that will come after lunch. Now, coming back to the city, coming back to the businesses, coming back to, let's say, financial difficulties of recent years, there's a question from Jaromír. How would you recommend to push the implementation of space technologies into the operations of the city, facing everyday challenges and financial limitations? Which is basically for both of you again.
So I think you need to have elemental, sort of understanding what you can do with the data. So you need to have either an institution within your municipality, within your city, or you need to have a set of people who really understands what it takes, what can you do with the data, and that is the, sort of, there is the bottom line, there is the zero where you need to start.
Yes, as Trey mentioned, I think the bottom line is the people. I mean, if you have old-fashioned politicians in the representation who do not see the potential of innovation, of course, nothing's going to happen. And I absolutely agree that it's hard to push through those. Also, from the let's say average worker at the ministry or at a magistrate. It's hard to explain to those people that the thing they've been doing for 30 years, it now should be different, it should be changed. So it really comes down to people. I mean, I'm looking at Jaromír over there, I don't know if he posted the question, but he's one of those people who are pushing the innovation in the magistrate, and I'm very grateful for that. And we need more of those. We need young people, we need young people engaged in politics as well. I think that would help too. It's in the human power. I mean, you can always make it about a top-down approach where ministry would push on municipalities to implement innovations, but we all know how that works. People then get stuck and they don't want to do that, and they find the obstacles instead of the ways. Mm-hmm. Right? So again, I come back to the education of general population about how cool space is in every single day of their lives.
Thank you. Yeah. I think it's a lot about the change of internal culture as well, meaning how we organize ourselves, how we define our goals, and how we define the means to achieve those goals. Now, let's move on to something, let's say, more low profile, or let's say less philosophical. There's a question, it's very practical. Do you think that Copernicus will be growing in importance in business applications, or is it going to be overtaken by private satellite companies?
I mean, you will have a longer answer to that, I suppose. So I will just state my case. Copernicus has the, let's say, advantage of being an EU thing, or European Commission thing, also in cooperation to ESA, right? And it has the public funding, it has the public support, and one thing that will make Copernicus always better than commercial stuff is that it's always available. If you have a commercial satellite, it can be taken down at any moment, or the signal could be turned off, the data could be monetized, etc. Copernicus will always be available to the people because it's funded by the people, etc., etc. I'm not here to advocate the EU system, but I think in this case it's very good. But yeah,
I think Copernicus enabled us to really focus on different commercial applications that are sort of targeting different segments of new customers, right? So with Copernicus, it's we can do defense and intelligence when we do it, but our focus has been on commercial customers and just like bringing that innovation. And then, we couldn't afford, or we would not be able to afford to buy commercial data for our experiments. And then just working with Copernicus for many years now, it gave us a great leverage in just the ability to experiment. So me personally, I hope Copernicus program will not only stay, but will grow. So.
Thank you. Now I have very specific questions to Maria, and I hope that we are not crossing any lines here with being too specific, but there is a question. Could you mention startups on which we can focus because of its high potential for the near future? So do you have any favorites in ISABIC currently?
Oh, it's like with children, you cannot play favorites. No, I think all of our startups have a big potential for growth. It depends on what area you want to focus. If you're interested in Earth observation data for agriculture, we have like 2 of those. If you're interested for analog missions, we have 3 of those, if analog missions are the thing for you. If you're interested in, I don't know, upstream startups that are developing CubeSats or components for CubeSats, we already also have like 3 of those. So it really depends on the segment, and again, I don't want to play any favorites, just check our website and and social media and everything, you know. No. Yeah, we have a portfolio on our website, so if you go there and click startups, you can also filter them through those sectors. So if anyone, or just hit me a message.
Good, thank you. I think that's useful and insightful, so please do visit the website of ISABIC Czech Republic. Now, I'm watching the time and we're getting closer to the end, so perhaps a couple of last questions, which is also a reminder to you if you haven't asked on Slido yet. Oh, there's a question from the audience, so perhaps we'll pass the mic. Our Lucia will take it.
Thank you. My name is Tomáš Kopečný and I am representing the Institute of Microelectronic Application in Prague. I have a question, seeing this innovation commercialization, where are the obstacles in terms of privacy protection, because it's very invasive technology, in fact.
So, you know, we in the past we received this question a lot, right? So just thinking about what is privacy and what can you really see from satellite, and understanding that, you know, I don't think we're intruding anyone's privacy, right? So when you look at the resolution, the repeat rates, and all these kind of things, we can see, you know, there are clear limits. So the limits are you can't see people, or if only in bigger crowds. You know, the locations and the information we get are all from public sources, and there are clear limits on the resolution that you can acquire from a commercial constellation, which is basically 30 centimeters per pixel, right? So, you know, when you think about privacy, we're all, you know, having a two-sided HD cameras with a microphone that is always on with us 24/7, literally, right? So I would really not be concerned about, you know, any satellite going over us and then monitoring or you know, making an inventory of our human activities, right? Because, you know, what we're doing and how we're intruding our own privacy with the things that we're using every day, we're holding in hands, that's certainly much worse.
I don't think I have anything to add to that. Maybe just saying it's the same with every technology. If you're targeted, the people will get the information about you, no matter what. No matter it's a satellite, it's your phone, whatever. But for general public, you're probably not. No one's probably gonna go into the trouble of finding information about you, because what it would be for, right?
And generally, you know, satellites has been intruding the privacy of the bad guys, right? So, you know, it's us looking at them and trying to figure out what they're going to do next. You know, if they're going to attack, if they're going to do another nuclear launch, if they're going to do something bad with our infrastructure. So all these kind of things we're trying to solve using Earth observation and AI.
Thank you. I think that was quite an elaborate answer, and hopefully it answered your question. Are there any other questions from the audience? Yeah, okay, there's one.
Good morning. My name is Turner. I'm from private sector. I do have 2 questions. One goes to Mr. Javornický. I would love to know how difficult it was to establish a US company as far as security clearance and US sponsoring, because if you are a foreign company, you probably have to have a US sponsor to be established. And financially, how it was difficult to start a company, how it looked with the finances at the beginning, and actually who came up with the idea to start such a company, because it's something very special.
So it all started when my high school buddy Pavel Machalek, he used to work at NASA Ames in California, and his focus has been on looking at the stars and trying to figure out whether there's a similar system to ours, right? Somewhere in our galaxy, right? So the first idea came from him. He came to me and said, like, look, we have these new satellites looking at Earth every day. Maybe I can use the same data science, to get insights from the imagery and create some kind of a very basic product, right? And at that time, Pavel was already a US citizen, right? So it was actually a US citizen and a Czech citizen forming a Delaware corporation. And setting the company up, it was extremely easy. In the United States, it's just a matter of going online and then setting it up. Obviously getting it funded and getting the products away, that has been extremely difficult and challenging first many years. So I remember, almost 3-4 years, we struggled to get even a basic funding, simply because the idea was too new, right? And all these investors not only in the United States, but in Europe as well, they were just back then looking at another, Tinder for dogs, and this was something totally different, and they just couldn't understand, like, why would you look at the Earth from space, right? And you did a pitch, you showed them the potential, and they said, like, is this something like Google Earth? And you said, okay, so and you moved on, right? So we've been through these challenges, and I'm very glad, because just like living through that challenge helped us came with even bigger innovation. And then, being limited in the funding at the beginning, provided us with this sort of scrappiness and being lean and effective startup that is, now a profitable business, which is very important.
And bridging to Mrs. Němečková, I would love to know concerning funding, how it works. You mentioned the ceiling is 50K, 50,000 euros. So how does it look like? Do you have to have 50% of your funding, or how does it work?
Okay, so it's not a ceiling, it's the money we give you. Let's start with that. The money is intended for R&D, so research development of your product. There is a certain amount that you can use for marketing, for IPR protection, etc. However, it's mostly focused on R&D. We do it like you get 20,000 euros at the beginning, then in the middle there is a report, after that you get 20,000 euros, at the end there is another final report and you get 10,000 euros. That's it. You have to provide us with some sort of invoices and proof that you didn't use it for your own salary, let's say, but you use it for the development of the product or the MVP or the prototype or something. But otherwise than that, there is not really a limitation. We do not take equity. You don't need to inject your money. I mean, obviously, if you're an upstream space startup, you will need to, because 50,000 euros is not that much for an upstream startup. If you're a downstream or software startup, it could, sustain you for the 2 years. Of course, not including salaries. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
Thank you very, very much. We just ran out of time, so I would like to thank our panelists, Jan Lukačevič and Marie Němečková, for their participation, for their insights. I'm really glad we kept it very specific and full of recommendations and suggestions on what can be done both in private and the public sector, and I think they deserve a round of applause. And now something you've been probably waiting for, it's the lunch break announcement. So right now a lunch break starts. It will run until 12:10, so please be back by 12:10, meaning we have approximately 50 minutes for lunch, for discussions, and then please do come back here afterwards. Thank you.
Ne, fakt super.
Okay. Hello again. Hello, everybody. I hope you had a good lunch. I hope you refreshed yourself to get enough energy for our afternoon program. Because we have some exciting keynotes and panel discussions ahead. Because we will talk about different things than so far. In the morning we covered the business perspective, and now we have two more perspectives ahead of us. First one is the defense perspective. Considering the situation in Ukraine, we see how it's rising in significance, and that defense will play a much larger role in space activities in coming years and decades. It's interesting because it actually all started with defense initially, and all of a sudden we went to mostly space research, and now defense sector is again taking its role more seriously. For that reason, we decided to invite a speaker from NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, who will tell us more about the actual relation between NATO and space domain. Some of you perhaps know that in 2019, NATO declared space domain as its operational domain, which is a big step forward. And this year we also went through some really big milestones, meaning space was officially mentioned in the new strategic concept, and we also have now space overarching policy in NATO. But I won't spoil any more news and secrets from the presentation you will get to hear in a minute. Our next speaker is Daniel Helgert, and Daniel works for the Defense Investment Division as a policy officer in NATO headquarters in Brussels. So please invite him on stage. And perhaps one final remark. I'm not sure, it's not exactly a common thing in Czech Republic, but this panel discussion as well as the presentation is Chatham House rules. So we apologize to all our viewers online. We are streaming, we are switching off the streaming, and let's say in more, let's say simpler terms, it's more like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So these are the rules. Be very open in the discussion, but keep it to yourself afterwards.
Okay, thank you, Jan. Thank you to the Innovation Institute and to the City of Prague to invite me. As Jan mentioned already, I work in the Defense Investment Division at NATO headquarters, and our role is really to help nations to invest into the right technologies. So I'm very happy to speak with you today. I know it's after lunch; it's always a bit of a difficult spot to keep people awake. So don't fall asleep.
and I will move on to my other position here. Now, we are slowly coming closer to the end, and there is yet another perspective. I think that it's the one that's most commonly thought of. It's the one where people usually consider space as the only area, and that is space research. And space research has been historically a very dominant area of space activities because it provides us with exciting knowledge. Thanks to space research, we learn a lot about the world we live in, and thanks to space research, we're also pushing the frontier of our technological edge. So for that reason, we decided to include also a panel on some super exciting projects. And one of them is LISA mission. LISA mission is, next speaker will explain you a lot better than I do, something that I'm super excited about because it's extremely complicated and it's a real challenge both from technological side of things and also from the perspective of multinational cooperation. So please do invite our next speaker, Dr. Oliver Janrich, who is a head of astrophysics survey section at the European Space Agency, and he will introduce us the LISA mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. It's a pleasure to be here. First of all, it's a beautiful building. Second, I'm a scientist, despite the fact that I seem to have acquired some management role as well. So I'm usually not talking to a forum of industry policy people, so mostly to scientists. So forgive me if this presentation has a slightly different style. And also you will notice that I move around because in my years in teaching I figured moving targets are harder to hit, so like not to stay static. As announced, I will talk a little bit about the LISA mission, in which the Czech Republic has a small but vital role. It's about observing gravitational waves from space. So the first thing I have to do, I have to disappoint you. I only have 20 minutes. So I will not talk about the fascinating science of gravitational waves. What can you do with gravitational waves? Where are they coming from? We have the networking session afterwards. If you're interested, I can tell you more about than you ever wanted to hear, I guess. But here are the three things I want to talk to you today about. What is LISA? What are the key technologies? Why is it challenging and also very rewarding to focus on this mission? And a little bit about where we are with this mission and what does it mean to bring that mission into space. And you will see a lot of schedules, a lot of seemingly confusing slides, or maybe actually confusing slides. So at the heart of science is technology, right? You cannot do good science or brilliant science without being able to measure things very precisely, and that usually goes down to technology. So what is LISA? LISA is a spaceborne gravitational wave detector. Those of you who follow the science news a bit might remember that we detected gravitational waves with ground-based detectors some years ago. People got a Nobel Prize for that, very well deserved. We are aiming here at much lower frequency sources. The usual statement we give is opens a new observational window to the universe. You can see things you otherwise wouldn't. It's a constellation of 3 satellites that orbit around the sun, not around the Earth, so it's a little bit further away. We use lasers to measure the change of distances between spacecraft, and we put reference points in free fall. And I will talk a lot about that a little bit, because this is where cool technology lies, I think. So this is how that artist's concept, as we usually say, the sun, the Earth on its orbit here, and a triangle 2.5 million kilometers on the side. You notice this is not to scale. None of these things are to scale. Otherwise, the Earth would be sub-pixel here, and you couldn't see that much of that either, because this is 150 million kilometers, and this is only 2.5. it goes around the sun in a yearly cycle, and it maps out the sky. That's all very cool if you're into orbital mechanics. I like to focus on two key technologies that we employ here. The one is the laser interferometry to measure the distances, changes in distances, and over 2.5 million kilometers, so that's quite a bit of a distance, and the reference points in free fall. So let's talk about laser interferometry. It's the most precise measurement tool for distances that we have. And just to introduce the concept, like you maybe remember from your high school physics, you use a laser, you shine it on a beam splitter, it splits up the light, reflected back, it comes back, and it creates light again. So, but let's go through that slowly. So we send light up and down the one arm, and we receive it back with a certain, light is an electromagnetic wave, so with a certain wave cycle, you come do that on the other side as well. And if they come what we call in phase, so, up and down here, then they amplify and you see light. Now let's look at a different situation where we extend that arm a bit. We still have the same phase relationship coming down from the arm that goes up and down here, but we have a slightly different one coming back. So you see now, bless you, peak on valley, valley on peak. So you can guess what happens. It extinguishes itself. We call that destructive interference, and you get less light. And if you use that to measure the change of this distance, you can easily go down to something like on the ground to 10 to the minus 20 meters or something like that, which is a very small number. In space, picometers, which is still small but not overly impressive for people who spend their life measuring things. The free fall is a different story. Free fall means for us nothing but gravity acts on bodies. So you can emulate free fall, and if we had a little bit more activity here, I would challenge you to step on your chair and jump down. This is about the 0.2 seconds of free fall you will easily get, right? Because only gravity acts on you, well, and a little bit of air resistance, and maybe fear, but that doesn't count. So if we put something into space, like this one, that's a cube, not incidentally, and you think, well, it's sitting there, what can happen? Well, the problem is the sun shines on it, and the sun sends light to that body, and the light is reflected, and it pushes that around, right? So maybe it does that. Yes, it does, right? So now at this point, it becomes an engineering problem, right? Trust engineers to figure out how to prevent light shining on the body. Now, if I give you 5 minutes, I'm sure you come up with the same solution. Build a box around it, right? Then the sun doesn't shine on the test mass. And that's a really, really good idea. However, now the box is pushed around, which is a good idea until that happens, right? The thing hits the box and, not good. So as a proper engineer, you go back to your drawing and say, hang on a second. If I can measure the distance between the wall of the box and that thingy, the test mass in the center, then I can push it around, I can measure it, right? Now I attach a thruster and I fire back. And if I do that, if I do that the right way, I can fly the spacecraft around the little cube in the center and keep that thing as undisturbed as possible. Now, this is a very, as you might imagine, very cartoonish way of thinking about things. This is how it looks in reality. And there's a good reason why I show you that, because I like to introduce a lot of the tiny little things you need to do. This was our LISA Pathfinder experiment, because when we introduced this idea of the free fall, people looked at us and said, well, yeah, great idea, it'll never work, right? So we were tasked by the agency, by ESA, to actually test it in space. You do that very often. You always test things rarely in space because it's expensive, but we didn't know that it works. So we had 2 of those little cubes. This is why I showed you cubes. There's a kind of this housing here, which I showed you the box. And you measure the distance between those with laser interferometry. This is the optical bench. You see a little bit of laser here, the green thingies coming in. And you build vacuum systems around that one. And it's all, I want to impress you in saying this is all very complicated. And it is. It requires a lot of technology. So it's not just sending a cube into space. You need to have somebody who builds the laser. You need to have somebody who builds this thing. You know, these little mirrors here need to attach to that optical bench somehow. These vacuum systems are made from titanium. You need to have somebody, some industry who does that for you. You know, it's not that you find it, can't buy it on the street somewhere. You need to have a mechanism that, because they are freely floating, so if you launch that thing up, you don't want these things to rattle around. That's your proverbial loose cannon on a ship, right? It simply destroys your spacecraft. So you need to hold that during launch, but also be able to release it when you're in orbit. So all that is technology that needs to be done. Now, this was the drawing. This is how it looks in reality. It's about, you know, this big, and worked beautifully. And now let's come a little bit to the point where I talk to you about how we actually do that in ESA. How do we approach such a science mission? In this case, we have 3 partners in the implementation of LISA, which is us, the European Space Agency. We do what we call the mission implementation, so we pay industry to build that thing. We also make sure that they know what they are doing, so mission architecture. We talk about the space segment. This is how the satellites, the ground segment, talking to satellites, hopefully not hacked, but I don't think anybody is that interested. The science ground segment, you want to get the data back, you want to do something with it, right? Launcher, we need to get it up there, and assorted other things. We have NASA as an international partner. Space is something which is extremely expensive and extremely hard to do, so you usually partner up with other agencies. Rare these days that one of the big space agencies does things on its own. At least ESA and NASA don't. The Chinese really usually do. The NASA will build us telescopes because we need to send laser out to the other spacecraft and back. They will build the laser, they will do something which is called the charge management device because things charge up in space and you need to control that a bit. Data analysis. And the member states here, they typically for our missions, we provide the satellites, the member states through the institutes, the research institutes and their local industry contribute to the real hardware, the thing that does the measurement. So the payload, in other words. And we have 3 big areas here: gravitational reference sensor, interferometric detection system. About that I will talk a little bit, a couple of minutes, and the science data system, which is effectively diagnostics. And a lot of non-hardware contributions, where people talk about also science ground segment, performance modeling, and all that. So this is how a telescope looks like. Well, this is the main mirror. We have a 30-centimeter telescope. As I said, receives laser beams. It also functions as what we call a superstar tracker, which means we need to figure out where the telescopes are pointing to, because we want to point them to that satellite, not over there, so we better find out where we are pointing to so that we can control the satellite to point to the right position. And there you see the whole thing. This is the so-called primary mirror, so that's the big mirror. When you see telescopes somewhere, they see that, oops, sorry, wrong button, here, and up there somewhere where you can't see it is the so-called secondary, and random visitors to the lab so that you can see the size of that thingy. It's about my size. They build laser systems for us, and there you get to a concept which we call redundancy. Space is hard because it's a very nasty environment. right, compared to ground, certainly for electronics. But it's also difficult to repair things. Those of you who are old enough remember that NASA repaired Hubble, but that was an exception, right? Normally, if things break, they're done. So we better make sure that they don't break. And one of the ways of doing that is providing copies of the same hardware. If one breaks, you switch to the other. And remember that switching part. So we have 2 lasers per optical bench. That means 4 lasers per spacecraft, so it's a total of 12 lasers. We want to have laser light 2 watt frequency stability. Probably doesn't tell you much, but I keep it on here anyway. We communicate between the spacecraft through laser links. So we need to put something on there to transport the information. That works effectively like your old-fashioned radio system when you have FM. That's frequency modulation. This is what we're doing as well. Those of you who worked with lasers, Newton-Yack laser 1064, that is the workhorse of many, many of those experiments. It's an infrared laser, so you can't see it. It's a diode pumped lead seed laser. A diode laser is what's in here, and it's amplified up to the 2 watts. The member states, one of the things they do is a gravitational reference sensor. So this guy here, they built that, and it's effectively a rebuild of what we flew on LISA Pathfinder. One of the things in space, heritage beats everything. If you have something that works, just use it, right? Don't try to reinvent the wheel, because you're never sure it comes round out again. So, the other example I want to give you is the interferometric detection system. This is what measures those phase shifts of the light caused by gravitational waves. And I want to show you that, again, there's not a test at the end. I will not ask you what the Czech Republic produces or what the Netherlands do, particularly because you have no clue what these acronyms are, and you shouldn't. But what I want to impose on you is the large number of member states that contribute to such a important subsystem, but it's not all, right? There are other subsystems in our satellite. So it's truly a multinational thing. And one of our tasks is to keep this bag of cats together a bit. And you see occasionally here, there's a new around Poland. So no, I didn't give that talk to Poland a couple of weeks ago. This is a slide that I borrowed from a meeting of our national project managers, and Poland decided to join that and help us out with power supplies. All of these things are expensive. Somebody said, Jerry, I think, said, everythit is 10 times more expensive. I wish I had his optimism, right? I think the factor is substantially larger than that. So this is the optical bench. It's a conceptual drawing, obviously. If you sit in the back row, you can't see anything, which is also a message. It's complicated. So you see the light going back and forth. You see a lot of optical components here. All of that need to be built and all that. But I want to focus on one specific thing. And this is this tiny thing over there. You see these 2 lasers coming in, and one with fibers, by the way, optical fibers. One sends light out, the other one doesn't. This is what we call cold redundancy. They're not on both at the same time, because that wouldn't really help, because they age and they break because of age. So what happens if one breaks or really misbehaves, we want to switch over to the other. It's relatively simple. We send light through this one, but then you see this blue block here, that will give us a slight shift in the position of the beam. And there you see it again, right? It would go through a slight shift of position. So we have a device here that looks like that, which we call the fiber switching unit. This is at the moment one of the key contributions of our Czech colleagues, sponsored by the Czech Academy of Science, and you see the Astronomical Institute, Institute of Physics, Institute of Atmospheric Physics, and these guys are, I think, at thermodynamics. They just give us the logo, but it's... four institutes of university or research institutes, and that's very typical. design and prototyping is typically done by research institutes. This is what they are really great at. But then if you have to build 20 of those things, that's not good, because they are students and they are postdocs, and they require, for their further career, they require original scientific papers, and saying in the next job interview, I built 24 of these things, doesn't get them an academic job. So guess what? This is what industry does, right? Because they live off that. If you pay them money, they do effectively whatever they can, and they do that very well. So this is where the Czech Republic has decided to help us out in building that. And, oh joy, let me talk a little bit about the timeline here. Let's see, do I have something else? No, so that's not the slide I wanted to show you, but never mind. I changed this slide last second. So this is telling you three things, I think. It tells you a little bit about how long it takes. This is a mission proposal to ESA, and I'm not talking about something that happened up here, which was the first idea of scientists in the 1980s. And there's a launch in 2030. So this is 20-ish years, right? And I heard in the previous discussion, there was a statement, this is exactly how you not do things. If it takes 30 years, you build something which is obsolete by the time it's up there. Welcome to space science, right? We are typically flying obsolete, old, clunky things that were absolute state of the art, actually mostly beyond state of the art, by the time of the conception and the first studies. So here, right? But it's a pretty boring pieces of hardware by the time they're up here. Would I like, I think if you talk to anybody at ESA, would we like to shrink that? Oh, yes. Can we? Well, space is hard. And development cycles are complicated, and not everything works out as you think it will work out. So just going a little bit about what we do here. The SPC here is our Science Program Committee. This is kind of the board for our science program. They decide what we do, right? These are where member states, so the Czech Republic has a delegate in there. Every single member state has one delegate in there. And they agree we want to spend money on something. Then we start studying something in industry, typically competitively, where we ask 2 or 3 industrial consortia in Europe to look at the mission and tell us what they think. And at the end of that, we have always a review where we say, show us what you did. Is this something we think makes sense, and can we actually do the mission? And then there's a decision, yes, we can do that, and let's look really closely into all those things, right? So this is a nice drawing, but I wouldn't know and you wouldn't know what this material is, right? Or what size this little screw here is, or what this red part is. This will be studied in great detail during this phase we are currently in. So this is typically a 2-year phase. And then end of next year, which you can't read because, sorry for the red there, is what we call mission adoption. This is when these guys here, the SPC, our program committee, says, thank you for studying that. We are now convinced that we want to actually put money in there. So for a mission like LISA, there to there, 10 million, 15 million, something like that. From there to there, 1.2 billion, right? So this is where the real money is. And why is it so expensive? Well, as in all big program, 60 to 70% is salaries. It's a large number of people working for a large amount of time. It costs money. And of course, you know, things like a launcher cost some money as well, on the scale of 100 million or so. But typically the big chunk is the amount of people who work there and the facilities you use to build these things, to set these things, to put these things together. You don't do that in your garage, quite obviously. And we also talk about something like the mission implementation. This is where we actually cut metal, put things together. Well, if I say we, I don't. Industry does, right? In contrast to NASA, ESA doesn't build satellites. So if you come to Noordwijk, I'm happy to show you around. You will be thoroughly disappointed because we don't have an integration facility. You don't see usually cool hardware sitting around and say, oh, this will be a satellite in its later life. We sometimes have hardware there which we test, but we don't build things. Okay, with that, I think, yeah, we're pretty much done. 5 minutes over, apologies for that. And let's go to the panel discussion.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Janrich, for your exciting talk. I'm geeking out here a bit because this looks like super complicated. And from my years as a space engineer, I feel like I would fail. So it's interesting to hear that somebody won't fail. But we are not here to discuss my engineering failures. We're here to discuss about a broader perspective of these things and about Czech involvement as well. And for that, I would like to invite on stage for our third and final panel discussion, Mr. Jiří Svoboda, who's a coordinator of a program Space for the Mankind, and also researcher at Astronomical Institute of Czech Academy of Sciences. So, welcome. And we will start with Mr. Svoboda, because I already have one question that kept coming back to me throughout the whole thing. How difficult was for Czech institutions to get into LISA mission?
Okay, thank you for this question. It was maybe not that much difficult thanks to our colleagues at ESA, who are very helpful and friendly. And so we started, actually maybe some of you remember, there was an event when we celebrated 10 years anniversary of the Czech Republic in ESA, and we organized here a quite large workshop for students and young researchers, and we invited experts from ESA, the people who are leading the study of the future ESA missions. And among those was also Paul McNamara from ESA, with whom we started to talk about like LISA is something that really attracts our scientific goals, where we have a group studying here black holes, and we were already involved also in other ESA mission, X-ray astronomy mission Athena, that also is devoted to study the origin of black holes in the hearts of galaxies. And we started these discussions here. And the first then step was that we were invited to the next LISA consortium, which was in Bucharest. We went there. I presented there what are the possibilities of the Czech Republic, how we can contribute, and it was still at the time where the things were planning. Of course, thanks to this very successful LISA Pathfinder mission, like some of these critical technologies were already given to countries and the teams that were so successful before, but there were still some open elements in critical technologies where we asked to get in board, and so then I think that thanks to this support, I think that this was very easy and straightforward.
Thank you. That sounds quite good. I'm glad Czech institutions made it. Now, question for both of you, and Dr. Janrich, you touched upon this in your presentation. In your opinion, what's the relationship between space research institutions and the space industry per se?
A fruitful one, I would say. Maybe a little bit from my personal perspective, after I left research in university and started working at ESA, I saw a lot of former students and postdocs from my then institute migrating to space industry. Now I can't tell you which one, but they are in Bremen, so you'll figure it out. Because they acquired skills that were needed at that point. Also, they brought in their knowledge, not only skills, but also their network, their connections, which is what industry needs, right? They need to be able to talk to researchers and figure out where they want to invest their local research and development. And the other way around, I already said that, if you are head of an institute and you want to build space hardware on a massive scale, not a one-off instrument of a camera that flies to Mars, that's a different thing. But if you want to build something for a fleet of satellites, you know, this, you're doing it wrong, because you invest so much money in quality assurance and all that, that you know, other people can do that better and are better set up, which is typically industry. So there is a nice exchange between that, and they have played different roles, but they are complementary.
Mm-hmm. And in Czech Republic, how does it work with industry from your perspective?
So, yeah, I think that also we are collaborating. I think that the collaboration is clearly needed. I would say that, like, at very early phases of the missions, it's important that the research institutes are involved, because of the flexibility also to reactions for changing of the different set of requirements or parameters. There are still things that are evolving. So, for example, our mechanisms are also evolving through this development of the mission. So that for this kind of the flexibility, I think that it's easier to start with the research institutes where there are no like formal contracts what will be done. But then later on, once the design is clear, then it's really step, as it was also mentioned here, for the industry to take the role for the final production and for the production of the elements, because actually in our case, there will be several pieces needed.
Mm-hmm. Good. Thank you. Now, Dr. Jänrich, you mentioned that space is expensive. And I already got a question in Slido, and I'm not sure if you know the answer, because otherwise we wouldn't be mentioning that it's expensive. But could you describe ways, tools, or measures how to make space projects cheaper?
As I said before, a lot of the money we spend goes into salaries. So if you want to make things cheaper, employ fewer people and finish things quicker, right? So if you can build things in 2 years instead of 5 years, you save money. If you use 10 people instead of 50 people, you save money. Now, how do you do that? Well, right, the guy who bought Twitter seems to have an idea. And, well, we will see about that in a couple of years, I think. But one thing certainly would be to go for more reuse, more standardization. That's a little bit difficult in space science because you are at the edge of what you can do, right? Sometimes beyond what you can do. And so most of our satellites are one-offs. But we have had successful examples in our planetary fleet where we agreed early on a joint bus system, which we call, the bus is the spacecraft, right, where you put the instruments on. And so we flew effectively the same missions to Venus, to Mars, and to Mercury in terms of architecture of the satellite. Right? And that sped things up, and this is why these things are called Mars Express and Venus Express, because they were really, you know, within 2-3 years, because industry knew how to build things. And that is a way forward, certainly. But if you have really complicated things like Athena was mentioned, LISA, other big missions, then usually they are so far outside the box that you really need to start constructing from scratch.
Mm-hmm. Now, and there's another question regarding, let's say, approach to work. And the question goes, would you deem possible for ESA to switch to iterative way of developing hardware instead of traditional linear approach?
It's an interesting question. I think that, for example, here in the case of LISA, we are really kind of making this more iterative way, like that we are constructing different prototypes to test different different technologies or different solutions for the elements. So I think that there are advantages of both, and in this particular case, actually, we are really enjoying that we are trying to manufacture something that still being in the study phase, where we are supposed more to draw graphs on the computers. We really have the engineers that touch with the real things, and they start to test how actually different technologies and different prototypes work, and I think that it's pushing us in forward, and this is something that is very common in industry. Of course, I think that we are at the beginning, and our success will be then visible after in next phases, whether our contribution works perfectly. But in this case, I think that we have a good experience from this iterative prototyping, something like doing faster. And again, this is something that is possible thanks to the fact that it's at research institutes, where we actually can spend also our internal resources for doing the related research. So it's not under like a very solid contract where it will be stated what is needed. So if it goes to the industry, I think that it will be very difficult to make in the implementation of contracts that will be asked from ESA to do these like iterations and trying different prototypes. So again, I would say that there is this advantage that at the early stage, when we really need to get to the best design possibility, it is at research institutes, and that's why we are trying to support also that the research institutes also do some like hardware development of the space instrumentation.
Mm-hmm. Now, I have a question for Dr. Jan Lukačevič, and it's mostly physics, so we'll make a short excursion into physics. And the questioning person considers this a tricky question. So, a tricky question. LISA is a continuation of LIGO, but Earth is not a perfect sphere influenced by gravity of large objects. How sure are you that LIGO was okay?
That's a bit of a personal question. No, I think the LIGO colleagues made a tremendous effort to make sure that the detection they saw, the first one in September 2015, was okay. Now, there's always doubts, and there have been publications that said, well, maybe you didn't take this into account. I think what really convinced the world was the event in August 2017, when the gravitational wave signal of a kilonova, that is two colliding neutron stars, so two objects that are about 2 times the mass of our sun with a mere 10-kilometer diameter, so rather spectacular objects, collided. And if these things collide, you expect fireworks. And yes, so we saw that in X-ray, we saw that in gamma rays, we saw that in optical, in infrared, everywhere, and we saw it in gravitational waves. So I think this is, when you do new things, you want to have that kind of confirmation. You see it in more than one detector, in more than one phenomenon. And otherwise, if you are thinking that your house is haunted, and you feel the little, I don't know what, the draft of air passing by, people will laugh at you. If you had a picture of the ghost, that would be a different thing, right? None of these things ever showed up, but, you want to have corroborating evidence from other detectors, and there we had it. So I think the LIGO colleagues know very well what they're doing in terms of diagnosis and making sure that, when we talked about that, just as a little fun anecdote here, the person who looked at that signal, he saw that with his naked eye on an oscilloscope, so not with complicated data analysis. The first reaction when he said, oh shit, right, what's going on? The first reaction was that, oh yeah, we have been hacked. Somebody is trying to smuggle a signal in just to prank us, right? Because the signal was so kind of unexpected in its strength. So yeah, they looked into all that and the housekeeping data and everything, right? It's not just, oh, I saw something, that must be a gravitational wave. It's a bit more to that. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
If I may add, yeah, exactly, I also agree. And one other aspect of the question was that LISA is continuation, or kind of like suggesting that it's testing maybe of the gravitational wave detection. So it's not that true, but why actually we go to space is to get really long arm between, for the laser, so between the satellites. And that's because when you have colliding black holes, so what LIGO can detect are black holes that are not larger than Prague. They are the remnants of the heavy star collapse, gravitational collapse. But what we aim with LISA is really collisions of the supermassive black holes that have sizes like solar systems and that are in the hearts of galaxies. And this will be seen by LISA, and for that, the gravitational wave that is caused by these monsters is actually much larger. So with LIGO, we cannot detect them. LIGO is blind to these collisions. So LISA is here to detect collisions of these supermassive black holes to understand how actually they were originated in the galaxies, and maybe even more, because there are also some possibility that with LISA there will be detection of gravitational waves that are from the very early universe, just short time after the Big Bang, where still the universe was not transparent for light. So with any other means of astronomy, we can look at this early universe. But with LISA, it will be possibly possible. So
that's exciting, and I think to be more inclusive, we will slowly walk away from physics again. Even though I would just casually chat with you about these things for the next couple of hours, but we will have the informal networking for that, for sure. So these questions can be addressed directly. I wanted to focus more on the overview of the situation in Czech Republic, because you already mentioned Athena, the black holes and so on. So perhaps you could answer, what other missions are Czech institutions currently involved in? What does it look like for us?
Yeah, so in European Space Agency, we are now for more than 10 years, like 13 years, I think. And so our first mission where we got involved was mission devoted to study the Sun, that is now in orbit, approaching the Sun. It's Solar Orbiter. That will be the first mission looking at the Sun from the pole direction, so it's very interesting and cool mission, and that's the first larger Czech contribution to ESA mission. Since that time, we got involved in several other missions, so as Athena and LISA were already mentioned, there are also missions to study exoplanets, Plato and Ariel, or a mission that will be launched next year called JUICE, which is the Jupiter Icy Moon Explorer. So it will investigate the moons of the Jupiter and to look if there is also a possibility of the life under the icy crust of these icy moons, where we know that there is a salty ocean. And so I would say that in the last years there was a really boom in getting involved in these scientifically very exciting missions, and that is really thanks to the Czech involvement in ESA, and we really want to take these possibilities and opportunities that we have, and in this large international collaboration we can work on missions that we would not be able to afford due to finances that are limited in a small country like Czech Republic. So I would say that we are now involved in all large ESA missions and most of the medium class missions and several of these fast and small missions at ESA.
Thank you very much. Since this event is organized by Prague Innovation Institute, we would like to work with the outputs of this conference. So the things you say will be passed on to the City Hall, assembly members, and people actually leading the city. So I would like to take the opportunity of having you two here and ask you, from your perspective, what does the city or perhaps country can do better to support science research and missions like LISA? So if you could pass a message on to our assembly hall members, what should they do to support space science better?
Yeah, so I think that of course the more budget is spent for like contributing to this exciting mission, the better, because there is this huge science interest. We might be now proud that okay, we are part of the missions. That the first step. It's really that we are proud, but there is also an opportunity to work on the most critical technologies with space missions. These ambitious missions are those that are driving the science, technology, and this development. So I think that it's exciting also from the engineering and thus from the industrial point of view on working on these big missions, because they learn to work with the most advanced science technology for space, even so that in 15 years it will not be maybe the most advanced science technology at that time, but still like that's nowadays we have this opportunity to really work on something that is unimaginable, or that was unimaginable some decades ago. One example is detection gravitational wave, other example can be imaging of black hole, and so on. So that's something really that 2 decades ago it was completely unimaginable. So these teams are working on the cutting-edge technologies and breakthrough science. And so I would say that for the Czech Republic and for the Czech industry, it's important to get involved more and more in these missions. So that's one thing what maybe the government can support, that this could be like one of the highest priorities. Of course, Prague does not have a budget as government, but still can let's say, build some environment that will be helpful for companies, like that there is this discussion about technological park, so that the companies will have some maybe facilities where there will be some testing facilities, some machines, maybe some campus where the small companies can share experience to get bigger and to get grower, maybe also some like communication between the Akademie and the industry, and of course, and that's also very important, is the education and public outreach. So Prague has a planetarium that is doing very well in the public outreach. Prague is organizing the education from the elementary schools up to universities. So that's something that really we need this support from the city, and I think that Prague has very good potential in improving all of these aspects and in supporting the education, research, as well as the industry.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult to advise local governments what to do better, particularly if you are from a completely different country. But I want to focus on something that Marie said this morning, and this is keep the enthusiasm going. Because if I showed you the development cycles of a typically large space missions that exceeds 10 years, 15 years, count 20 years, the engineers and the scientists you want to have working on future space missions are now entering secondary school. Right? Keep that in mind. It is the 10 to 12-year-olds that will be the guys and the girls, hopefully the girls as well, that drive these things forward. It's not the likes of me or Jiri, right? We all expect to live forever, however, right? At some point, we will be shoved out into management positions, as it happens, and then, right, we have to ask other people to do the creative work, the imaginative work, and the brave work to put these things forward.
Thank you very much. And I think it really helped us to present the final question, since we are reaching the end. So the final question from Slido is, from your point of view, how to promote space research and projects like LISA to general public? How to attract children for this kind of study and for their future careers?
Well, we are trying to do that by, of course, a lot of like outreach activities, public lectures. We have also demonstrator of imagining how the gravitational wave work. So we are trying to do these steps, and I think that this in my opinion, these astronomical missions like LISA or like black hole physics and this, it's very easy to popularize. And I would say that what is not that easy to popularize maybe is that in Europe we are also having projects that we can be world leading. And I think that this example of Athena and LISA, these ambitious missions, are those that will really help for public to understand that Europe is one of the main leaders in the scientific exploration of the universe, of the space. And it's not only NASA, that is not only in the United States, even so that still, like, we must say that their missions are really spectacular, like James Webb Telescope. It's incredible, and it's a good example how to attract the public. It's really building ambitious, challenging missions that will bring breakthrough discoveries. And I think that once ESA will have missions like Athena and LISA, then the outreach will be really, really easy, in my opinion. But of course, one I already mentioned, Planetarium is really doing well with the outreach in Prague, so that is something that is really related to Prague. We also really need to go to kindergartens, to schools, and to advertise the opportunities. And we have opportunities also for people getting involved in space projects, and that's important that public will know in Czech Republic that they can really touch the most advanced technology development and the most challenging scientific missions in future. And I think that this is important, that we are part of it.
Yeah, indeed, and maybe you shouldn't ask somebody from ESA how to do that, because we are traditionally not very good at that. I mean, Jerry mentioned JWST. How many of you know that two of the main instruments are European, right? And a couple of the pictures, the spectacular pictures you see out there, are taken by European instruments on an American satellite. As I said, science is collaborative, and you will be hard-pressed to find a recent mission where there is not on either side some contribution from the other side on there. Yeah, I think the idea promoting things through local institutions, through local planetaria, to local societies, make use of your resources you have in schools, talk to institutes. I mean, I'm sure Jerry loves to go to schools every now and then and talks about things. I just told you, realize that. And I think most of us are happy to talk about things, but we also have to accept that, you know, there's a lot of attractions out there, and space science, as fascinating as it is for me and you, otherwise you wouldn't be here, competes with professional football and things like that, and operas, and, you know, whatever tickles your fancy. So we can't expect too much, I think, but we can certainly do better.
Thank you very much. And I think this can conclude our panel discussion. You're right on time, and I think we can enjoy refreshment and informal networking in these beautiful premises. So thank you for joining us here, for providing very interesting insights about both LISA and state-of-the-art technology related to that. And I wish you both good luck, both with the mission and with your work in general, and hopefully see you around for yet another conference where we're going to be convincing people that the space is close and space is the area where we should put more focus on. So thank you to both of our speakers, and thank you all your participants who spend your time here learning about all these exciting things. I'm really glad we managed to pull this off even without any major issues. This is a great final moment, because we conceived with the idea of organizing this conference already in February. So it's been quite a long time of postponement and changing things, and now it finally happened, and I hope that you take away with you that space is for everybody. Space is not just space research, but also defense, business, and it has plenty of activities where you can get involved in by yourself. So I wish you all a very nice networking session, and good luck with your activities in coming years. Thank you.